Hi, I'm Pat. This is my fiber art studio. Thank you for watching. So today I am going to share with you my process of creating fabric collage. In the background you can see some of the quilts that I have made from my hand-dyed fabrics. And this process uses the scraps that I have left over from my quilt making process. So I generate lots of scraps of fabric. Which each of you received in your school packet. I have also, well, let me show you some examples. So projects that I've done with the fabric collage, I take tiny pieces. This particular piece was made by a group, or they made a similar one, where each of these was one square of backing with a line drawn down the middle, and we did complementary colors. We got warm colors and cool colors on each square, and then these squares were arranged like a quilt pattern, and so you get an all-over design just using all those tiny scraps of fabric. Other ways that I've used the scraps of fabric, you could do something small like this. Like this. And this one was never quite finished, but this is for a journal cover in the beginning of that. And here's another one that was created, and a lot of tissue paper was incorporated into this one along with the fabric. And then here's another one. I think maybe this goes that way. So you can get very abstract with your design, or you can get more of a picture type of design, more of a landscape. On this, so I'm going to demonstrate this process using two canvas boards. I'm going to turn this now this way so that you can see what I'm doing. And I have over here, I took my fabric and I went through it and I picked out some cool colors, the greens, yellows, and blues. And then here I mostly picked out reds, but there's a few little oranges or yellows in there with it. So I'm going to be using these fabrics in my collage. And I'm going to do two different designs. The first one, I'm going to use my ruler and create kind of a similar to a quilt block. And I'm going to draw a line across here and across here. And if you want to create a design, you could draw several different lines. Here, actually, let me make this a little bit more complicated. I'm going to add another line here and another line here. So I've got all of these different spaces to work with, and then I will create a design within that space. So that's one way of doing it. Another way would be to just start picking fabrics and gluing them on in whatever arrangement they came in. And then a third way would be to do a landscape. Let's see, I could put one more here. So let's get started. I've got my glue. This is actually thinned down Mod Podge. And I have my fabrics. And I have a scissors handy so that I can, if I want to cut specific sizes, I can. So I'm going to start out with this piece here, and I'm going to start out with this section, and I'm going to make this section red. So So I am just applying a thin coat of Mod Podge over this section that I'm going to work on first. And then I'm going to start adding scraps of fabric. This one I want to cut. I can cut some of these into smaller pieces if I like. You could be precise on this, or you could be more ab lib. Okay, so that glue was still pretty wet, so I'm going to lay that down in place. Yeah, maybe I'll move it this way. I think I'll put that. So I'm putting this right on the edge here, and then I'm going to turn it. I've let it overlap so I can turn it around to the backs so that I get this edge here covered also. And then as I add these, I can add another thin layer of glue over the top, and that will just really seal those fabrics in place. So I'm going to just keep on repeating this process. Choosing fabric and gluing it down. And if you decide that you want to change what you have down before the glue dries, you can do that too. I'm going to wrap that around. Oh, and I forgot to mention, if you see, I laid a piece of paper down, scrap paper. Newsprint would work, or a piece of plastic, something to protect your work surface. And so this is something that I don't care if I get glue on it, and I can put it in the recycle or throw it away when I'm done. Let's see what other. And I'm just using a variety of reds here. This one's got this little gold stripe on it. I thought that would look pretty neat there. And then I want to cut this so that there's a little bit to fold over. Whoops. And I do tend to get a lot of glue on my fingers as I'm working. It will come off. You do want to be a little bit careful that you don't get the glue on your clothing. Some people like to wear an apron or something. Let's see. I think that I will cut this at an angle this way and put this up that way. So I'm adding a little bit of variety here and shapes and shades of my warm color palette for this section. And let's see, here's another piece I'm gonna cutting this down a little bit. Here, I want this to be kind of underneath there, so I'm going to pull that up. And I think I want it under there too, so that I have that crisp edge on that one. So these are, when you work in small sections, you can move things around a little bit as you go. And don't worry if this looks really white from the glue. This will dry clear. And I've got one little section there that I need to add a little something to it. Oh, I have this. Actually, I'm going to take a little piece of this fabric that's got a little bit of the complementary color, the green in there. I think I'll just do a little and a triangle of that and add that on top to fill that spot. Okay, so that's one little section of red. Now, I'm going to go on to this section, and I'm going to set the red aside and start with my greens and blues and yellows. And some of these fabrics are way too big, so I like to cut them down into smaller pieces. So that's where it's good practice using your scissors. And the fabric sometimes is a little bit more challenging to cut than paper. And so what I tend to do is I kind of hold it between my fingers to kind of hold that tight, so that then when I cut, it's easier to cut that. Okay, so I think this is going to go right on the edge here. That was a little bit more glue than I needed, but I'm going to pull this up so I have enough to wrap that edge. Wrap that edge around there and get that nice finish on the edge of this. Okay, and let's continue with this. See a little piece of blue. Maybe I'll put this blue down here. So just have fun with this. And if this is a really fun way to explore fabric choices and creating a design using some different colors. And I really like the contrast that you get from the different textures of the fabric and the contrast in colors. So the warm versus cool gives a nice contrast for the design. Gonna go ahead and add this. Actually, I want to cut that frayed edge off of there. If you end up getting glue on your scissors, be sure to wash the scissors off to keep that glue from sticking onto it. It's all right for a little bit of time, but be sure to do that so that your scissors are still usable in the future. Let's see, I think, I'm going to lift this up because I like that edge there. And I want to get this underneath there. So I'm going to put that underneath. And when you do this, you don't need to probably be quite as picky as I am, but this is my process. This is the way I like to do it. And you can adapt this to the way that works for you. And it'll be fun to see what everybody comes up with. So I'll put that back under there. And got another spot there. Oh, this is kind of that would be an interesting little piece to put in there. So I have a contrast of shades of blue and green and different textures on these fabrics. And let's see, that needs to go so that it stays in that section. Okay, so at this point I have two sections done. My plan is to put red fabrics here and the blue and green fabrics in this section and just kind of alternate them. So I'm going to end up having red, blue, red, blue, red, blue, red, blue in each of those sections. But I'm going to stop this recording at this point and continue this, and later you'll get to see the finished results. Thank you for watching. Okay, I've got all the pieces on. I'm just waiting. I'm just going to wait for it to dry to be able to see what it really looks like when all that glue dries. But if you look at it, you can see where I repeated some fabrics in each of the blocks, so that when you look at it, there is some consistency. There is still that contrast between the warm colors and the cool colors, but there's some repetition in overall shapes and colors, or particular textures and fabrics in each section. So let's hope that this looks really great when it's dry.